Hello, YouTube. Just another video I thought I'd make. Sort of on the topic of right to die and criminal justice, prison sort of issues. Just because recently hearing stories in the news about our local jail corrections office being, there's been a series of suicides in the jails. And apparently someone's been sneaking in fentanyl, and maybe they're using this to overdose on. I'm not quite sure the details and the cause of death, but it just got me thinking about I'm in favor of a right to die, even for prisoners, and the case is actually strong for that. Noise in the background. Philip Nitschke of Exit International has said to deny that would be a human rights abuse, and I have to agree. It just makes no sense that even in prison, locked in a cell, they're gonna force you to live and carry on and prevent you from even refusing food and drink. It's just cruel and inhumane punishment as it at its finest. But I have a sort of different view when it comes to prison sentences and capital punishment, what it's known as the death penalty. I view life in prison, life incarceration, as more inhumane and unjust or unmerciful, whatever you want to call it, than capital punishment. That is death by lethal injection. I remember watching or hearing about the trial of Jodi Arias, and she had apparently murdered her boyfriend. And during the trial, or at the sentencing, she had requested to have the death penalty. Trying to get my dogs to stop attacking each other. But I remember thinking that it would be rational, sensible, if you're being given a sentence of life in prison, or if you're in prison for even decades, you should be able to make the decision to opt for a peaceful death by euthanasia. There's really just no use forcing some of these inmates to live and using up all the resources, and just because we want to torture them for the sake of it. And some people seem to have this contradictory view where in our legal system, capital punishment, the death penalty, is regarded as the I guess the worst, the greatest punishment that can be doled out by a judge. It is reserved for the worst offenders, and yet if someone in prison wants to die, we refuse that, and act like no, living in prison for 40, 50, 70 years is they must endure it, they must suffer, we must enact justice. Well, this isn't really justice, it's just our sense of vengeance, our need to punish this sort of primitive, more primordial aspect of the human ape that we, I guess, as a civilization have not really gotten past. This need for retaliation and for revenge against the norm violators. Which then you can peel back the onion deeper and philosophically and scientifically, and where we essentially, with so many findings in neuroscience, neurobiology, behavioral biology, this ideal of a libertarian free will, of ultimate responsibility, and really just begins to disintegrate when you really start looking at the human brain and all the factors that make and contribute to shaping and establishing a psychology, a personality type, just don't seem to have truly a free will. There is this causal chain of, well, first you're born with a certain pair of genetics, then those genetics interact with an environment, your experiences in early childhood, the way the brain developed while as a fetus, the fetal environment, the womb, all this studies and evidence about early childhood abuse and trauma and its effects on the brain, and the development of the prefrontal cortex of the brain being retarded and diminished, which is the brain that is responsible, the part of the brain responsible for sort of executive functions and inhibitions and self-control and impulse regulation, and all of this stuff where you have less connectivity and less prefrontal development, you're more likely to aggressively react to things and commit criminal offenses. So essentially, the criminal justice system should be entirely wiped and thrown out, and findings in neuroscience and this knowledge of a fundamental determinism in our lives should play a greater role in what we do as a system. And it leads to a more restorative or reformative, rehabilitative approach to justice. A model similar to Norway's is what is the only thing we can really call rational in light of the true evidence of the origins and predispositions of behavior. Of course, it doesn't mean we open all the prisons and sing Kumbaya, everything's okay. It's more like prison or detention is more, its purpose is to protect the general welfare and stabilization and of people. It is to keep those liable to commit crimes away from the society. That is still reasonable and efficient. The same way we would not want to drive a broken car down the street that is gonna hit someone. We'd keep it locked in a garage. At the same time, we're not wagging our finger in moral condemnation. You bad car, you sinful car, you innately depraved car. You are responsible and culpable for your actions and failures, and you deserve retribution and punishment, and you reprehensible sinner. Now, none of that makes sense in the scientific account of things, in modern psychological understanding of how our brains work, and how genes work, and how the environment plays a critical role, and we are not really conscious agents deciding who we are and what we are, and there's no soul. So all of that needs to be eradicated. Not like it will be. When they've still got delusional religious kooks in halls of power, and this discussion of free will versus determinism is still just in academia, in the research facilities. It's all very well known, but in the general society, in the land of the commoners, you can't bring that up, you can't say that. Our delicate sensibilities, our need for punishment, our need for laying blame, but we get emotional satisfaction out of this to some extent. Many do. Hell, even I do on occasion. It's just the way we naturally are programmed. And then it's like, oh, right, they're just a machine following biological, neurological, chemical conditionings. And you get this idea of the continuous personal identity, and what that means for sort of life sentences in prisons. Do we really need life sentences if people can truly change and be rehabilitated and basically lose almost all connections to this past self they may have committed a crime? I mean, it's just kind of like that Shawshank Redemption, where Morgan Freeman is going before the parole board, and he says something to the effect of, that young boy who committed that awful crime is long dead, and there's just this old man in his place. It's just like, you're no longer who you were. You're not. And age plays a role in this. You're not someone who, your rage and your testosterone levels and all this have gone down. You're not really a danger to society anymore. No, it's a question in philosophy, this ideal of personal identity, and its persistence through time. Well, I guess that's about it for now.